Hi, it's Mayor Walter Sendzik, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a great show planned for you today. We're going to be talking about how the region and communities in the region are addressing the issue of homelessness. And we're also going to be talking about creating homes in our community through Bethlehem Housing. So Lori Beech will be joining us after the break, but before the break, we have an individual who is now the team lead for a program called Built for Zero. So we are in March. It is March Madness. For those of you who are watching the NCAA basketball tournament, I don't know what picks you have, but my picks probably aren't going to get to the very end. And I do know that with March comes April, so we're at the very tail end of winter, fingers crossed, and we're heading into what is, in my opinion, one of the best parts of Niagara, which is springtime. So I hope you've had a wonderful February, and for the kids who are on March break, make sure for the folks out there we're taking care, driving safely, and I hope you're having a wonderful March break to all the kids out there and the families that are enjoying a bit of a break from school. So this show and this guest that we have kicking off, Lisa Bell. And Lisa Bell is the team lead for Built for Zero, which is a program that I really want to showcase to the viewers here today. And Lisa, you worked in the city of Hamilton. You worked for the province of Alberta. You're a graduate from Guelph University. You have 2 degrees. You did your second one in social justice. And really, it's interesting to see how your career has landed you at the region. And then being at the region, you're involved in such a transformative program. And I'll use that word transformative because I think you're going to be able to shed some light on what Built for Zero is. So explain to our audience Built for Zero. What's the concept and why are you the team lead?
Sure, yeah. So Built for Zero is run by the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. It's a national nonprofit organization. And what Built for Zero does is it helps the communities that participate across Canada. There's 33 in total currently. It helps those communities work towards an end to chronic homelessness or long-term homelessness. And so they let us test different pilots and approaches that work toward an end to chronic homelessness and allow communities to be really innovative. And that's why, I think that I'm so excited about Built for Zero as well, because they really allow us to shake up the status quo and to ask some difficult questions and really start to pick apart really complex problems like homelessness, like affordable housing, and start to tug at those strings to really start to try some things we haven't tried before.
So the interesting thing, because some people may say, well, has the region just not paid attention to the homeless issue that we're facing? And I will say, and I think you would agree with me, is that this is why Built for Zero I think is a unique project, is that this isn't unique to St. Catharines, or this isn't unique to Niagara Falls or Welland. Homelessness is an issue that's impacting communities across North America. And so how we're dealing with it may be different from community to community, but it's a part of communities, homelessness. So the region they had a 10-year homeless action plan. So explain a bit about the background of the region has been involved in this and has been focused on homelessness for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we were accepted to participate in Built for Zero, because we already had a lot of the building blocks in place that allow us to really be innovative in addressing homelessness. So we have long had the 10-year Housing and Homelessness Action Plan, which recently went through a 5-year review to make sure that community priorities are still reflected and we're still on track towards those goals. And we've also had a shared database between all of the community providers that provide housing and homelessness services across the region, which is something that a lot of communities across Canada are currently struggling with and working towards. So we really had a solid foundation to do some of this work in Niagara. And homelessness has always been a priority for communities across the region. Built for Zero just allows us to work with our other communities across Canada who are also really ambitious, who are also really driven, who are also doing lots and lots of cool, innovative things around the work of social change.
Right, and I appreciate you saying that, because Built for Zero, the origins of it come from the United States. And Built for Zero was and is a program that started targeting veterans, homeless veterans. And there was cities roughly the size of St. Catharines that embarked on this journey, and the results were, I don't want to say immediate, but they were almost immediate. Some communities experienced a reduction in homelessness within 6 to 9 months after the infrastructure of the program was put in place. And so in terms of a viewer thinking about, one is, what is chronic homelessness and functional zero? These are terms that you're going to be using. So explain what chronic homelessness and how it ties into functional zero.
Absolutely, yeah. So chronic homelessness is long-term homelessness. And to be more specific, it's when somebody's experiencing homelessness for 6 months or more over a year period, or the equivalent over a 3-year period. And so often with chronic homelessness comes a lot of complex needs. And the goal of Built for Zero is to really focus on those who have been continually cycling through a shelter system or have been experiencing long-term absolute homelessness where they're unsheltered, sleeping rough outside, to really start to say, how can we have better policies, programs, frameworks, support, staff that really focus on moving these people out of homelessness into housing so that homelessness is not a long-term experience.
Right.
And so that's kind of why Built for Zero focuses on the chronic population first, but also has the ultimate goal of ending all homelessness in communities. So we really start with the population that has been experiencing homelessness the longest.
Right, so chronic.
Chronic, yes.
So in terms of, you're the team lead. That puts some pressure on you, and looks like you enjoy the pressure, but it puts some pressure on you, and talk a bit about what you're learning from other communities who are a couple stages ahead of Niagara on this path towards the ending of chronic homelessness. So touch on some of that so our listeners or our viewers can see what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing that I'm learning from other communities is to just be relentless in your focus on ending homelessness, because ending homelessness can be a reality for Niagara Region. It can be a reality for communities across Canada. And so every little project and task that we do, we just have to continually ask, does this help us advance our efforts towards ending chronic homelessness? And that's something that I've learned from other team leads across the country, is that you kind of have to take a step back and say, we've been doing this for a long time. Is this working? Should we try something a bit different? And just making sure that all of the great work that we're doing ultimately links back to that end goal of ending chronic homelessness.
So one of the more nuanced, or I guess detailed parts of Built for Zero is, and I think you're touching on it, is the data. And what I find fascinating or interesting about this approach is, and not being disrespectful to previous approaches, but the previous approaches appeared to be about a blanket approach to an issue. So we have a homelessness issue, so we'll create a strategy, a 10-year strategy, we'll put a blanket over top of it, and while we may see some success, it's not unique to the individual. Where I see this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but where I see Built for Zero is, it's more about creating the programs or identifying what's best for the individual that's in a state of chronic homelessness, and how do you get that individual out from multiple partners. So explain how the partners are being brought together, whether it be through technology or through infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've long used system-level data as one of two types of data. We have individual-level data and system-level data. And we've had system-level data through things like point-in-time counts and various studies that allow us to create pilots and approaches that are directly reactive to what we're seeing in the data. what Built for Zero helps us do is move a bit more towards individualized data, like you were saying. So that way we have more information on what client needs are, where they've been accessing service in the past, where, what are their choices in terms of housing, so that community can come together and make sure that the approaches and programs that we are providing to them is the best fit for that person. Because I think that the term homelessness and people experiencing homelessness is a common quality between everybody's experiences, but each person is different. Each person needs a tailored case plan and housing plan that will best fit their needs.
And I think that is what I'm hoping people understand, is that the Built for Zero is about really targeting the resources that we have to the individual and creating that continuum of care through the chronic to housing and lifting them out of homelessness. And while the infrastructure or the collection of data was there previously, I just don't think it, from my vantage point, and I'm an outsider, I'm just looking at it, the program on the inside, I don't think it was tied together, meaning the different agencies were able to pull out as much rich data as they will out of the new system. And in doing that, and I think touch a bit about so we've talked about infrastructure, talk about the social side. So I think what people need to understand is that a homeless person is not a homeless person by definition of them living on the street. That homeless person is also someone who's carrying a lot of trauma. So explain some of the social side of it that helps or is required, is an important understanding for that individual care sort of continuum.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, in connecting that to the infrastructure, since we have this data on people's experiences of homelessness and their needs, we can use that data to bring a variety of partners together that provide different wraparound services. So we can get providers in the same room, providers of mental health services, different housing providers, perhaps a shelter caseworker that has worked with the client, etc., to make sure that all of the voices and all of the people who really want to help this one person can come together and coordinate over what they're seeing in terms of this person's needs. So it really allows us, it's a tool to allow community to continue coming together and really helping this person, lifting them up through multiple perspectives and providing different supports that they have expertise in. So that way they're not receiving kind of siloed care. They're not receiving, this service from place A or this service from place B. They're receiving all of that in a coordinated way and a way that works together.
So we're Built for Zero is what, 6 months in?
Yes, we joined in July of last year.
Okay, so eight months in, and before we head into the break, what are some signs of success? What would you, in 30 seconds, what's a sign of success?
So many. It's hard to pick.
We'll come back after the break. We'll just give you one right now before as we head into the break. Give us a spring flower that's coming out of the dormancy of winter. What would be a early sign of success?
Sure. So we recently had some increased program capacity for our Home for Good program, which serves people experiencing chronic homelessness with complex needs. So we had 18 new spaces, and we got multiple perspectives, multiple community providers together to best understand who would be the right fit to receive these supports, who is the most in need. And so we've been able to provide support and get people onto some caseloads, 18 additional folks who have been experiencing chronic homelessness. So, that's a really, really big
Good
success.
Job. All right, so we're going to head into the break. Lisa's going to stay with us. We're going to be joined by Lori Beech from Bethlehem Housing, who's going to be talking about their new project on Church Street. And we're going to bring these two topics together and show how our community is making a difference. And it's making a difference by the amazing individuals that are joining me on the show today. So come back right after the break. Hi, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. Thanks for joining us today. We're talking about homelessness in our community and the programs that we're putting in place to deal with this issue in our community, as well as creating homes in our community. And our next guest, Lori Beech, who is the Executive Director of Bethlehem Housing here in our community. And she is no stranger to the housing, the complexity of housing when it comes to Niagara. And you're also the chair of the Niagara Region Home for All, Housing Affordability Innovation Committee, and a member of the Niagara Region Housing and Homelessness Community Advisory Board and Task Force Committee, co-chair of the GNCC Not-for-Profit Council, and a founding member of the Leadership Consortium involved in the provincial rollout of the Rent Smart program, which is a great program, and Ready to Rent landlord and tenant education program. That is a lot to do with housing. That's why you're on the show today.
Thank you.
And you're also on the show because you're part of the team for Built for Zero. So we're going to make that connection. But first and foremost, for folks who are going, Bethlehem Housing, I see it, I know kind of what it does. What does Bethlehem Housing do in our community?
Okay, it's actually Bethlehem Housing and Support Services.
Okay, so it's just
that's
so
okay.
long. I'm just trying to
I know,
truncate it.
But it
Supportive
does
housing is
explain very
important.
carefully and clearly what we do. We
Yes,
do
it does.
both. Bethlehem Housing and Support Services is a nonprofit community housing organization, and we also provide social support services, because the folks that we serve often have housing issues and challenges because of their social challenges and their personal challenges. So we address both of those things, and that's all part of preventative homelessness, and so we address not only housing through our buildings. We own our own buildings, and that are considered affordable rents. And within those buildings, we provide support services for those who live in the buildings. But one of our buildings is also a transitional housing, which is a second stage housing for folks who are challenged with homelessness or have experienced homelessness in a more traumatic way and need that extra stage to get their lives back on track, and also families who have experienced trauma through violence.
So how long has Bethlehem Housing and Support Services been around for?
31 years this year.
31 years. And one of your first developments, I believe, was on James Street?
Actually, Welland Avenue is our Bethlehem Place.
Yep.
So we name our buildings, and Bethlehem Place is just a transitional housing program.
Right.
So it's all done in partnership with Niagara Regional Housing, so that we can provide what is called rent geared to income rent supplements for those who are on the priority list of the housing wait list.
Right.
They're on the priority list because of those challenges that we consider in this community priority.
And
so
how many
they are
units would you have under your, how many units would you have under the guidance of Bethlehem Housing?
We have 27 of the transitional housing, and then we have another 80 permanent supportive housing, but we're about to more than double that.
Just more than double that. So that's a nice segue into what is an amazing development taking place in the heart of our community, downtown St. Catharines on Church Street. So tell us a bit about that, because it's a different model.
It is.
I think our viewers would be interested to know this is a different approach that Bethlehem has taken to creating a much needed space in St. Catharines.
Absolutely. It is a different ownership structure. We own our current buildings as a nonprofit organization, but unfortunately, in the housing world, as you all know, there's a crisis, and so we have to look at new creative ideas around how to make that happen. It does cost millions of dollars to build a building, and so nonprofits don't necessarily have that kind of money, and so we have to create interesting and very doable, workable partnerships that are a little out of the norm to actually make those things happen now. There's certainly government funding, government loans to develop properties and buildings, but it's not an easy access to those funds. And even when you do, you still have to have partnerships. So in this model, we were not able to access any of those funds, so we created a partnership with Pantera Group. They are a developer in town, and also in partnership with First Ontario Credit Union. And so that we've partnered. It's a great what we call P3, because the third partnership is the government.
Right.
And the government did not necessarily provide capital money. The money for capital development is through the private sector,
Right.
Pantera and First Ontario, but the government side is assisting with the ongoing operations over the long term.
Right.
With housing development, you have to drive those capital costs down. And as a nonprofit, we have easier access to those kinds of programs where private sector does not.
Right.
So the partnership allowed us access to those incentive programs to drive the capital side down, so that during the long term and the operations, when we have to service the cost of the development through lower rents, we have those other incentives that kick in, such as rent supplement programs and the tax exemptions
that the city
and
is-
development
yeah.
charge waivers.
Yeah, and I think that's Sunil Bahadur Singh, who is
That's
the president of Pantera, one of the owners of the company. This is a goal of his. A goal of his was
Absolutely.
to create this model where you've got the not-for-profit housing provider, the private sector building, and also the government, both federal and provincial, coming to the table and saying, we can provide the funds and the private sector can build the structure, and at the same time have a very well-established organization like Bethlehem Housing and Support Services being a tenant in there and really making the difference of those. So how many units?
127.
And describe, I guess the one thing that I want people to understand is the vitality of what you're bringing into our community. So describe that vitality, because I think it's important for people to understand. It's a lot of units you're bringing into one part of our downtown.
We are, and we're not only creating an innovative ownership model, but we're also creating a service model within that building that we're really excited about.
Right.
And that's a partnership with other housing and service agencies that will have some of their folks and their clients living in the building, and they will come in to provide the support services. And so we're really excited about that. But it's also really, it's just about providing housing, affordable housing for members of our community that are having a lot of trouble because of economics.
Right.
To find housing, and particularly rental housing, that's affordable. And we have this large crisis issue that's all about economics, and we could certainly talk about that for half an hour. But the bottom line is those economics, including ownership and property values and all of those things that are driving costs and rents way up, are most vulnerable in our community do suffer the most.
Right.
And that is why you're seeing a lot more of these folks, some of our community members, being pushed out onto the streets. And it's extremely challenged, not only economically, but socially. But the people that are going to be living in our building, yes, there are folks who are challenged, but it's not really, it doesn't mean that there's not a great contribution by those citizens. All of our citizens have their way of contributing to our downtown, to our community, and we're there to support that and make sure that that happens.
And that's what inclusivity looks like when you look
Absolutely.
at community building and how do you create spaces for everyone.
That's right.
This is an example of that. And they are going to be in the heart of our community. And I think it's something that we should celebrate. It's something
Absolutely.
that is going to be a catalytic change for that part of our community. And it's being led by innovation. It's being led by multiple partnerships. So I just want to, we've got a couple more minutes left. I want to pivot back into Built for Zero. So
Sure.
you've been in this business, I'll call it business, you've been in this space
Sector.
for a few years. What attracts you to Built for Zero?
Oh gosh, it's another tool in our toolbox. The service, we call it the service system, the housing and homelessness service system, has been working many years, and we've worked really hard at collaborating and bringing ourselves together to coordinate. But this is a tool that is going to really make that happen in a very strong and significant way, because we're going to be given and be provided with and contribute to that data that will tell us about the individuals that we serve, it will, and the taxpayers, the listeners, they should be very happy about this, because it is actually going to help us maximize our resources that in a way that we will be able to focus the services but work stronger together and support the folks that are, in this case and initially, most chronically homeless. And it will help us as an organization to understand the needs of the individual person and understand what other services have touched that person and how we can better work together.
Right.
And it's hard to understand, but it actually works through that data.
And that's why I think that's the most important point. Now, Lisa, I'm going to go back to you because we got about a minute and a half. When it comes to long-term success, we talked before the break, what is some short-term sprouts that you're seeing? What can we expect to see from your research, from your partnerships with other programs that you've seen across the country in a year from now when we're sitting across having a conversation? What's success going to look like?
I think success is at that point in a year from now, we'll be able to have real-time data on people experiencing homelessness. So that way, I mean, even on a weekly to monthly basis, we can come around this data and think about solutions that really respond to what we're seeing. So if, for example, we saw that there was a rapid increase in youth homelessness over the month of September, we have that information quickly and readily available so that we can say, who are these youth? Who are they being supported by? What other pilots or projects can we do to address this? What other system changes or policies outside of the homelessness sphere are, potentially affecting this increase in youth homelessness, just as an example. So in a year, I mean, we'll be able to have that data so that we can really pivot our approaches to ending homelessness to be responsive to our community needs.
So functional zero is 3. That's what for a community our size.
0 is 3.
Give or 2. So functional 0 is 3. So do you think, I'll ask you both of you and then we'll wrap it up. Do you think
Sure.
it's possible? Functional 0.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you've
Yes,
been
I
in this
do.
business. You've been in this space.
I do.
Absolutely. And from your experience that you've seen across the country?
Yes, absolutely. And so just to clarify, it's 3 or less people experiencing chronic homelessness sustained over 3 months.
3 months, yeah.
So absolutely, I think that we can definitely reach functional 0 in Niagara for chronic homelessness.
Wonderful. That's great news.
It's not going to be easy, but
It's not going to be easy. These are complex issues, and I just want to say thank you, Lisa and Lori, for what you're doing and for how you're making a difference in our community. I think it's important for our community to see the kind of heavy lifting that's being done both by the not-for-profit sector and by the private sector.
Absolutely.
And also by those who are in government who are looking to make a difference. So you are making a difference, and I want to say thank you. And to our viewers, check out Bethlehem Housing and Support Services. Go to their website. They're always looking for volunteers. They have a great housing hero program, which if you want to be a housing hero, go check out their site, get involved. You could also go to the Built for Zero site and website and learn more about not just what Niagara's doing, but what they're doing across the country. So this is an important initiative and a topic that we're having a lot of work being done around. Homelessness in our community is a real issue, but I think what you're leaving with today is that we have, from the real issue, we have real work that's being done. And when it comes to creating a housing for everyone, when you look at Bethlehem Housing and Support Services, when you look at different organizations that are trying to be a part of that built forum, we are working hard to create a space for everybody. So thank you for tuning in and hope you're enjoying March. I think I'll see you in April, and April flowers bring May showers. Nope, April showers bring May flowers. So I hope it doesn't rain very much in May because that's when the flowers. Anyways, have a great time. We'll see you on the next show. Take care.